All right, welcome back to the channel. We have lots to talk about in this week's video. Some major changes are coming to the way mortgages are approved for investment properties for individuals. These changes are going to greatly impact how most Canadians that want to build a small rental property portfolio can actually get approved for the properties. So we're going to talk about that in this week's video, but we're also going to look at the rental market, rental construction right now, how it's all tied to immigration, and what we can expect to see with real estate prices over the next 3 to 5 years. Real quick before we get started though, if this is your first time to the channel, my name is Hassan. I'm a real estate agent in the Vancouver area, and I make educational real estate content to help you on your real estate journey. When I'm not making videos like this, I'm helping people just like you buy and sell real estate across the Lower Mainland. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to chat with me one-on-one, you can book me for a free call in the Calendly link below or on screen, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a future video. All right, lots to cover. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to start with the big news in the mortgage world that's going to have some very significant impacts on, again, Canadians that want to purchase investment, specifically rental properties. OSFI, Canada's banking regulator, has announced that they are going to make changes to the way that lenders can approve these rental property mortgages. Now, I do need to preface all of this by saying we don't have a ton of details right now. There are still a lot of questions, so I can only cover a small bit about this. But what we do know is that what they're not going to allow for anymore is what they call double dipping by lenders when it comes to income. So what they're basically saying is that if you used your employment income and or rental income to get approved for the first property you own, lenders can no longer use that employment income again or rental income to approve you for the next property. Now, lenders have been able to use that employment income on the next property, and it allowed average Canadians, I guess you could say, to build small rental style portfolios. Looks like that is coming to a halt. The big question that everyone has been asking so far, outside of why are they doing this, is will this apply to renewals? There's a lot of people, of course, that currently have properties that are coming up for renewal. While we don't have a specific answer to that, I cannot see this being attributed to renewals. That would completely just obliterate so many people in the market. So I just cannot see it happening for renewals unless you're switching lenders. But this is probably a way as well for the lenders and the banks to retain their clients at a renewal point, because you basically would not have a choice. You'd have to stick with your lender and remove some of the competitiveness in the market. But the big thing here is, Canadians, clients that want to purchase 1, 2, maybe 3 rental properties, a small, modest rental portfolio, going to be increasingly difficult for them to do that. And the why behind it is they feel like Canadians are carrying too much debt, obviously, and they want to make sure that they can make the payments on subsequent properties. So you can see the angle where it's coming from. I think when we look at some of the stuff that OSFI is doing lately, they are also allowing, I think I mentioned in the last video, they're allowing purchasers that purchase into step code 3, which is basically a energy reduction step. As you move up, you go from step 2 to step 3. What's more energy efficient in a build? They're allowing the step 3 purchasers to have an amortization over 35 years. So inherently basically saying you can take on more debt if you're purchasing a more energy efficient home, which costs the builders more money. So I guess they're okay with some type of debt, not in other ways. But at the end of the day, this greatly impacts, again, the people that own a principal residence. They want to purchase another property as a rental. They're going to have to make more money. They're going to have to make more money. They're going to have to be able to show more income. If they had $100,000 salary and they used 75 or 80,000 of it for the first property, they could use the 20,000 for the next one. But a lot of purchasers, as you might guess, they are essentially maxing out. It's taking all of their employment income to be able to get approved for a mortgage in this current market. So again, we don't have a ton of details right now. I wish I could go more in depth with more specifics, but I will cover this as we move forward. I mentioned just recently about step codes, and having more energy efficient homes, and how this is costing money to the developers, which of course they have to pass it in the sale price to consumers. I believe it was the VP at Quadra Homes. There was a meeting with some industry stakeholders, some real estate professionals, and they're calling on the province to have a sort of housing policy committee with people that are actually in the industry to help figure out this crisis. And he was the one who specifically said, as you move up the step code, that's an additional $25,000 that gets tacked on to the price of a home, which ultimately goes to a consumer. And we're probably at a point now where we have to really deeply think about how critical it is that we have this step code system, where again, developers every couple of years have to move to the next step code, which becomes more expensive. We have to really look, is now the time to be having to go through that when we have a housing crisis? When we look at everything that's getting built now, developers are of course holding back. There's 2,500 estimated vacant new condos in Vancouver on the market. Developers own obviously a big chunk of these, but also initial purchasers that completed, they own some of these as well. So these are just sitting on the market, waiting to get moved, waiting to get sold. So of course, these developers are not taking on more projects right now. You see a lot of heavy rental construction. We've talked about on my channel the 500,000 homes per year that the federal Liberals are targeting to build en masse quickly, modular rental leasehold type properties, and engaging some large investors into the mix, and actually, basically saying we need more large investors. CMHC came out earlier this year, and they said, look, we need more REITs, we need more institutional investors to get us out of this housing crisis and to build rental housing. What was interesting that came about at the same time is they were talking also about how rent control has not shown to work, has not shown to keep rents down. This was in the same publication. So kind of angling things, saying, look, we need these large institutional investors, but they need to be incentivized to build in Canada by perhaps not having to adhere to rent control. Rent control, it leads to more dilapidated properties. Landlords don't upkeep the properties as much. Not enough competition. There's less rental units because not as many investors are getting into the market. So ultimately the rents increase. But it's just interesting, the angle of how things are shifting in this market. A lot of policies targeted at these large scale rental investors, and strata properties are basically not being built right now. Besides what's currently getting constructed, there are almost next to nil actually getting built of new product. So if we look ahead, what's going to happen? The product that's getting constructed today, that's basically our supply of 3, 4, 5 years from now. So 2029, 2030, there's not going to be a huge glut of condos. If we look around the Vancouver area, we have in Metro Vancouver, we have about a year's worth of inventory, maybe a little bit more than that when we look at on and off market. Fraser Valley, we have more than that for sure. But at some point, we are going to move through this inventory. And like we talked about, developers are holding a whole lot of this inventory. I'm talking to some folks that are, some developers that are thinking, okay, we have a lot of condos, a lot of vacant condos. At what point do we have to take some of these and put them into the rental market? And look, the rental market is not robust right now. Rents have been coming down for 18 months. But you also have to think now, if rents have been coming down and that's not a strong market, why are all these large institutional investors getting into the rental market? Here in Canada specifically, Blackstone last year, they purchased Tricon Residential, which was predominantly in the US, but in that purchase, they basically purchased $2.5 billion worth of Canadian pipeline of rental housing. And you look at it and you say, well, rents are coming down, they're capping immigration. The reality is everything that Canada is doing right now on the housing front, it is not to create more housing for Canadians that live here today. in my opinion, it's to create more housing for Canadians that are going to live here in the future. All of this immigration reform, extremely temporary. We have a baby boomer generation that is retiring. We have nobody having kids anymore. BC has the lowest birth rate in Canada, but birth rate's going down pretty much right across the world. So we don't have the next generation coming up, the next generation of workers. You may have heard in the US all of the controversy surrounding the H-1B visa. And then the federal Liberals come out and they say, hey, we're going to create a program so we can entice this talent to come to Canada. Now, what happened last time is we didn't have the infrastructure, we didn't have the housing, we didn't have the healthcare, and they just opened up the taps, allowed everyone in. Turned into a huge issue, of course. Housing, of course, being the number one hot button topic, and affordability. And that basically negatively affected all of that. So what's happening now, essentially, in my opinion, again, is this immigration reform is very short-lived, and that's why you see all these institutional investors piling into rental. They understand for Canada to grow as a country, the only way we know how to do that is through immigration, and so they have to try and put the horse before the cart by building the homes first. So rental price growth, I think, is almost a guarantee over the mid to long term, and that's why you see a lot of people piling in to the rental product. But circling it back to perhaps yourself as a condo buyer, maybe you're looking at the market and you're like, everywhere I turn, there's a news article saying there's so much supply, shadow inventory. And I've spoken to media about this topic several times. In fact, they called me today. They want to talk condos. Everyone wants to talk empty, vacant condos. They're not going to last. They're not going to last. How long it goes, that's up in the air, and how low can prices go? We just got the data for last month, slightly up over last year's number in terms of total sales. And so we've paced that way for July, August, September. We're just slightly up from what happened last year, which is a bit of a positive sign considering from February, right when the US got a new president, we had double-digit declines year over year. So we're starting to pace to that number, but ultimately the reason why these sales are starting to pace is prices continue to come down. On the apartment side and the detached home side, an average of between 4 to 5% benchmark prices coming down. So the questions are, how long will the inventory last? How low will the prices go? But again, they're not going to be here. These condos are not going to be here forever. And I think we're going to sit here in 4 or 5 years with people that want to purchase stratified condos because it's the affordable product. And there's just not going to be a lot on the market for them to purchase. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something. If you did, consider sharing it with someone so they can also learn something. And again, if you enjoy this weekly real estate content, subscribe to this channel. You want to talk about real estate with me, you can book me for a free call or just give me a call, send me a text, whatever you like. But really happy to talk to you guys this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.